Okay, so, okay, let's go to Facebook. Oh, I think it's there. Go live on my timeline on my page. It's just connecting now.
Mm-hmm. I'm just watching the birds fly by.
Okay, sure, you could do that. Do whatever you want.
You know, it's like we worry about stuff, and you know, Mother Nature animals keep running around. There's birds going from tree to tree, and
Yeah. Okay, so
I'm
I'm
sure
gonna
I've got
go
squirrels
live.
here in the backyard. Great.
Okay, add a title. I'll just put Bill's name. Lennan.
Lennan.
Lennan. Lennon. I liked how you do the heart. H.
HAERT. HAERT.
Okay. I don't think I have the Lennan.
Yeah, LENNAN.
Oh, and I'm going
A.
like, this doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Heart programs. Programs. Oh, let's put programs. Okay. I'm ready to go live. Come on. I did a title. Oh, now it's setting up again.
Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Yeah, we're live. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Great. So welcome everybody. I'm here with Bill Lennan, and we're just talking about, we don't want to call people unkind. And then we thought, hey, let's put the conversation on live because, I'm in the kindness business too. And just trying to say, like with my hypnosis is like, well, I don't want to tell people they're unkind. So, because somebody suggested I could hypnotize people to be kinder. But truth is, nobody wants to be told they're unkind. So Bill and I were just having this little conversation. So we're going to carry on our conversation.
Thank you.
So
yeah.
Bill, welcome to the podcast. And
thank you.
Tell us, a little bit about yourself, and then let's finish our conversation.
Sure.
Keep going.
Yeah. So my name is Bill Lennan. I've been working in technology here in the Valley 20 plus years. I've done a lot of software related stuff. Started off writing code and evolved into product management. And I've been doing some version of product management for, I would say, probably the last 15 years. Along the way, I started building a tool set to help my teams perform better. And I was because when I started off, when I got my first team, I didn't know how to make it be successful.
Right.
And I wasn't really getting any kind of coaching from management. And so I started everything I'd get my hands on to help my team be as effective as possible. It turns out that what I was building was a skill set that is most of a skill set that's used clinically called dialectical behavior therapy. That's a skill set that helps people have confidence and be calm and not get depressed, not get anxious, learn how to ask for things. It's 50 plus skills that have been curated from the best suggested people in the world. And they've got 30 years of clinical research behind them to prove that it works. My partner is a mental health professional, and she teaches people every day in a clinical setting how to use these skills to get their lives back from suicidal ideation or even trying suicide and substance abuse and depression and anxiety. And so we had a conversation. Part of what she realized early on was that, number one, these skills were super effective for the people that she was helping. And number two, they were actually helping her, and she was a grown adult and thought she knew how the world worked. But clearly this is a tool set that she didn't get growing up, right? And so her thought was, why don't we teach this to people before they're clinical? Right? It's kind of like, you can either put lifeguards on a swimming pool and nobody knows how to swim and they'll have to do a lot of rescues, or you teach people how to swim. And people are a whole lot safer when they know how to swim. And so this is the teaching people how to swim version of mental health. It's preventative mental wellness. And so we started comparing notes. She wanted to know how I'd gotten my team to do things, and I started explaining it. And she said, "Oh, your skill set is most of DBT." And so that kind of started us working on building this curriculum that we are now offering to high schools. Okay. Perfect for distance learning. Right. Before COVID, we designed it for distance learning, not knowing this was coming. Yeah. But it's 100% online. We co-designed it with a former Teacher of the Year, nationally recognized Teacher of the Year. He gave us some great insights on how to make this easily consumable for students and also very easy for teachers and school districts to implement. So that was really cool. And so that's what we're doing right now. And the conversation we were having right before we started was all about how to get people to be nicer. Right. And yes, as you said, to your point, which is perfect, is you can't really go up to somebody and say, hey, you should be nicer, or you're not being very nice, or you're a meanie. All right. That doesn't play out very well. Right. But if you can, what I've found is that if you can put it into an impactful context for people about how the thing they want to get to can be achieved by a small behavior change, and then people will understand that, right? And I've done this with teams in the past where we wanted to achieve something. We had people on the team who they didn't know that they were behaving badly. And it wasn't that they were behaving badly overtly, but it was the impact on the rest of the team. Right? And so rather than telling them that they were behaving badly, we had a conversation about how to get more from the rest of the team and what it was that was the environment that they needed to really come forward with their best selves and to be able to produce better for the team, right? And in that conversation was easy for people to hear because they want the team to work better. Right. Almost anybody who's rational is going to say, yeah, I want the team to work better. And so it was a super easy conversation, very easy buy-in. And it took us, we did this process. I got their commitment to do it for 6 months. Okay. It wasn't like this was going to be a 5-minute thing, right? Because part of what I knew was in looking at this was that even if I got these people to change, getting the other people to step into that space was also going to take some time, right? And so that was how we framed it. Was here's the impact. Those people are going to have to see that you're more compassionate and you're more empathetic. But they don't know that today, and it's going to take them time to move into this place of feeling the freedom. Right. And so that was how we set it up, and it worked ridiculously well. Right. And I think you can get people to do if you this is part of what we teach is this whole idea of enlightened self-interest. Right. Is if you think of that everything's what's in it for you, right? At the core, all of us are ridiculously selfish. Right. But we do it in a way that's good for the team. Hopefully. Yeah. And so when you start to help people understand that learning skills that are about their self-awareness, their emotional regulation, their interactions with other people, good decision making, and you couch it in the space of the impact on other people, but the benefit to them. It's much easier for people to go, oh, okay,
yeah,
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. It's just, it's always thinking about what value am I providing, or are we providing? And then, what's the end result for the other person, right? What, like you were saying, what kind of impact, are they going to get out of it for themselves, so that they feel that they got value out of that experience. Right.
And I think a lot of it also, we think about this constantly, is what is the context for the other person?
Right.
The students that are coming to us, what's the context that they're looking at? And so, because we're talking about high school students and they've got a 4-year span, and our curriculum actually runs for 4 years.
Okay, cool.
Because, it's kind of like, in a way, it's like math. It's a stack of skills, right? You can't just start at calculus.
Right.
It doesn't work, right? You have to start with understanding numbers and addition and subtraction, and then multiplication, and then work your way up the stack to get to calculus. It's the same thing with operating your brain.
Right.
And so we contextualize things. So for juniors, we put the education in the context for them of, what do you do when you get out of school? If you're thinking about going to college, how to think about the decision making for going to college.
Right.
If you're working on your college applications, how to effectively balance your time. So you don't just sit staring at a computer for 3 days straight, trying to come up with a good essay. Which people do, right? Yeah. We've had students tell us, I've been staring at my computer for 2 days and I can't write. And we're like, well, that's not surprising. After 20 minutes, if you can't get anything, leave the building and go do something else, and then come back and,
go for a walk.
Yeah, exactly. Go for a walk. Yeah.
Clean up the brain.
So that, I think that context is always really helpful. So if you want to help people be kinder, it's what's the context that's going to be beneficial for them, right? In that kindness space.
Right. Yeah. It's. I think there's so many programs that help people be kind. It's just, like you were saying, I know I have to think about it. Anyway, so let's get on with Bill. So so Bill, tell me a little bit about how do you get students to grasp onto what you're teaching, and how do they and how they go from there, that point of view? Like you said, you have your program and high school students doing it. How adaptable are they doing your program, and how do you get more students to take your program, or what are some of the challenges you have or don't have? A lot of questions there. Loaded questions. So just start where.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Yeah. So the starting point is that, fortunately for us, right? This is a curriculum that's been around in a clinical setting for 30 plus years.
Right.
And it's a very, it is a very tactical, down to earth kind of stack of skills. And it's very prescriptive, right? It's very nitty gritty in that all this stuff is based on brain chemistry, because people have brains and there's chemicals that run through our brains, right? And everything that we're doing is all impacted by brain chemistry. And so you can change your own brain chemistry on the fly in a variety of ways. You have all the control, right? You don't need to take any pills.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways to do it. And so what we're teaching people is, one, how to notice at the very most fundamental level, to start off noticing where they're at.
Right.
What's going on in your brain? What's going on in your body? And then the things that they can start to do to be able to regulate their own brain chemistry. And go for a walk, right? Going for a walk is actually one of the techniques that you can use that helps your brain chemistry, right? It's not super complicated. None of the stuff that we're teaching is particularly complicated. It's all pretty simple. And once it's kind of like, it's like building a house, right? When you build a house, you've got to have a saw and a hammer and some nails, and you got to know how to cut some wood to a particular length and put the pieces together, right? It's not particularly complicated. And so we use videos because it's all online, right? And the videos explain very specifically what to do and why to do it. Why this works. And it's because it's all based on biochemistry and neurology, the chemicals in your brain. It's very clear about,
No, can you just maybe walk us through, like, if you had a body of students, what would they be learning and what kind of impact it has for them at the end?
Sure, of course, yeah. So, as I mentioned, it's a 4-year curriculum. And the first year is all about self-awareness and self-regulation. And so we start at the very beginning with understanding all the different ways that your body operates and how to control it. One of the things that we talk about is the benefits of stress and the upsides of stress, and how you can go from the negative kind of stress to the positive kind of stress in a heartbeat, just with your thoughts. Right? We talk about the control mechanisms you can use to when you're super stressed out about something, for your brain to change your brain chemistry. Like sticking your face in a bucket of ice water sounds crazy, but it actually fires off the mammalian dive reflex, and it has a big impact on the vagus nerve and the chemistry in your brain. And so you can be super stressed out, stick your face in a bucket of ice water, take a breath, stick it back in. And all of a sudden you're a lot calmer because the brain chemistry changed because of this physical thing that you're doing. Right. And then you can start to once you can be thinking calmly, then you can start looking at the problem and figuring out what it is that you're thinking that's not serving you very well, and how to turn that to something that does serve you. One of the things that people forget, and we mention this throughout our course, is that everything in the world is easy if you know how to do it. The difference between it's easy and it's hard is knowing how to do it, right? And so if you're frustrated because you don't know how to do it, and you look over there and somebody's making it look really easy, all that is that they've put in the work and the time and the effort to get to that place, right? If you ever watch Michael Phelps swim in the Olympics, and he swims an amazing butterfly, he has got a lot of years and a lot of miles in the water into perfecting his swimming stroke. And I can be jealous and upset that my butterfly is not as good as his. All I want, but really it's time in the water, right? And that metaphor applies everywhere, right? It doesn't matter whether you're writing code, you're trying to figure out how to interview for a job, you're learning how to be a pastry chef, or you want to get your dog to obey, right? It's all a set of skills, because you look around and you're like, wow, this guy's great at getting his dog to do what he wants. How? How come that guy's so good with his dog, right? How can that woman get that horse to do that crazy stuff in the ring? Well, she spent a lot of time training the horse, right? And she spent a long time learning the skills first herself to get the horse to do a particular thing, right? It's all about learned skills. There's no
No magic.
There's nothing fixed. There's no, yeah, I mean, the magic is putting in the time and the effort.
Yeah.
Right. That's really the magic is I've got to put in the time and the effort. You know? I'm a pretty bad juggler, but before I started juggling, I was no juggler.
Right.
Right. And I put in enough time and effort to be a bad juggler.
Yeah.
And so I know, oh, if I put in more time and more effort, I'll get to be a better juggler.
Right.
Right. And it's like that with all these things in terms. And so being able to be calm and proactive in emergency situations is a skill set.
Yeah.
Right. Being able to ask for things in a way that it's easy for the other person to say yes is actually a skill set.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of these little pieces that all go together.
Right.
That are skill sets that at the end of the day, they allow you to be calm and confident and relaxed in any situation I can imagine you can get into, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the beauty of being able to abstract the skills out is that you can go from one context to another context and use the exact tool set.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And say, oh, this is how this excuse me, this is how this works over here. And so it's kind of it's fascinating how it works.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, I can solve this problem, right?
Yeah.
This is how bad the problem actually is. Not blowing it up. And I've solved problems like this before, or I know somebody who's solved problems like this before. Yeah. And away we go.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So what do you think some of the biggest challenges with kids in high school are facing right now, and how does your program help them with that? I think there's a few challenges. I think the number one biggest challenge is that nobody has told people that mental wellness is a skill set. It's a learnable skill set, just like math or chemistry or how to swim butterfly or how to do gymnastics well in a balance beam. Right. Right. These are all learnable skill sets. And so, and they all require practice, right? There's no, like, a friend of mine made a comment one day that you can read all the books you want to on swimming, but until you get in the pool and you actually swim, you're not a swimmer. Right. Right. You're a reader until you actually get in the water. Right. Right. And so for us, it's about you learn it and then you practice it. Right. You learn it and you practice it. Kids haven't been told that there's a skill set to get to all these things they want to do in the world. They've been told that they learned a bunch of academic stuff, right, and that will give them success in the world. Right. One of the problems with that is that we're having a ton of kids graduate with college degrees from the best colleges in the world, and they can't get jobs. Right. And they can't get jobs because, they know how to do courses, they know how to take tests, but what employers want is actually communication and problem solving. Right. And the confidence to ask questions and to not have to walk into the room knowing all the answers in advance. Right. Yeah. And those are completely different skill sets. Right. And so, part of what has led into us building this curriculum is that for the last decade, I've been helping people kind of as a side project. Friends would introduce people to me, helping people get jobs in Silicon Valley. And I kept seeing the same pattern over and over and over again, where people have all the academics, right, but they don't understand the value of all this other stuff, and that they need to be able to understand what's going on for themselves, understand what's going on for the rest of their team, understand what's going on for the company, ask questions intelligently, figure out how to break down problems, Mm-hmm.
and have confidence in themselves
Mm-hmm.
that they can do all these things.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, the first big chunk is recognizing that the working well with others and all the stuff you got to have going on in your head to be able to do that
Yeah.
is critically important.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is that kids aren't learning a whole bunch of real world skills
Mm-hmm.
like they did years ago.
Right.
Right.
When we were a kid.
Yeah. Right. You know, I talk with my dad about his parents or his grandparents, right?
Yeah.
And the things that he did and the things that he knows that his parents and grandparents did.
Mm-hmm.
His grandmother was born before cars were a thing on the road.
Right.
And before she died, she flew in a jet airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's a huge transportation jump, right?
Yeah.
But she also knew how to grind wheat and skin animals and farm and mend clothing and work on the house. Like, she had a whole bunch of skills.
Right.
Right. So when something happened, she had a reasonable idea of how to go fix it.
Right.
Right. Of what to do in that context and how to pattern match a problem, whatever it was, to something roughly in her experience.
Right.
Right. And so that gave her confidence in a lot of contexts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've, through luck and my own curiosity, I've learned how to do plumbing and electrical and carpentry and how to work on cars and how to code and a bunch of stuff in the water. And so, you know, oftentimes I'll look at things and I'll go, oh, this thing that I've never done before, but it's in some ways, it's kind of like this other thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, oh, it's not brand new. It's only 20% new.
Right.
Right. And that gives me a leg up in context versus somebody who's never seen this.
Right.
Right. They have no idea. And I think, like, if you hang out with kids who grew up on farms, they have a bunch of skills and they have a bunch of confidence.
Right.
And this is farm kids today. Right.
Yeah.
You know, small family, you know, kids from small farms, right? And they can step into a lot of places where other people are uncomfortable. And even without the academic background,
right,
they can solve problems.
Right.
Right. And I think that we've gone so hard into the academic side.
Yeah.
That we've forgotten with all the Common Core stuff, what it takes to be successful at work. And companies are seeing this today, right?
Yeah.
Companies really want EQ. They want people with emotional intelligence, right? Yeah. And the schools haven't adapted yet. Yeah. And so that's where we come in, right? Yeah. Is we're doing this bucket of emotional intelligence skills. Schools call it social emotional learning. Okay. And the concept of social emotional learning has been around since the 90s. Yeah. And it's been a kind of a 20,000, 30,000 foot view perspective on things that you should learn, very abstract, but not real ground level tactical. And so really it's about their fundamental principle is the skills that kids need so that when they get out of high school, they're ready to go to get a job. Right. Right. And, you know, we've looked at the stuff that a lot of people have done in this space, and the thing that we recognized was needed was this very tactical kind of stuff, which is why we built our curriculum the way we did, was here's all these tactics and here's how to make it work. And these are the contexts that make sense for you where you are today. Right. Right.
I wonder, as you were talking, and we're talking about farm kids and kids that are more academically strong, I'm wondering if we should pair off a student that's from the farm area, you know, that kind of agriculture, because it is hard work, but yet you have to learn quickly, right? So, and pair them up
Right,
with
right.
somebody that's high academic and get these kids working together and see, like, you know, okay, this is what you need to do and this is what you need to have, and, you know, kind of teach each other. I don't know, but it's kind of like, yeah, I can see that happening, you know, because when I was growing up,
Yeah,
I loved to spend my time at the farm. I mean, it was my getaway place, and they would say, "Why do you want to spend so much time here? It's hard work." And I said, "It's fun." You know, like, you know, it's better than
exactly.
being in the
Right.
city life. You know, what do you do in the city life? Not much
Exactly. Yeah.
going
And,
on.
and and that's, I think that's a super, you know, if we, that's a super valuable mental model that you've got,
Hmm.
right? Because you got to see both sides,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you got to understand both sides. We've got a friend of ours who's he's in grad school right now.
Hmm.
And he's kind of, you know, one of my favorite examples.
Hmm.
He grew up on Saipan, which is a U.S. territory in the Pacific Ocean. It's next to Guam.
Okay,
Not a great family life. People there don't have a lot of money.
right.
Through high school, he got horrible grades because most of the time in the middle of the night, he got up, went out fishing to feed his family,
Yeah,
and then to have fish to sell in the fish market first thing in the morning, and then he went to school.
yeah,
And so, you know, that was his priorities, right?
yeah.
Um, he, at the end of high school, applied to go to a college here on the mainland, and got into the college because the school knows of where he comes from.
Right,
They've had multiple students
right.
um, from that island. And when he got to college, he started off with a 4.0 GPA
Hmm.
because for him, going to college and doing all the academics in college was infinitely easier than waking up in the middle of the night to go fishing to keep his family alive.
Right.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so he saw this very, very differently, and he sees it very differently. He looked at all the opportunities to move forward career-wise as
Mhm.
being much, much easier than what he'd come from.
Yeah.
And so even though we look at, oh my God, he had this horrible struggle as a child,
Right.
they didn't have electricity at his house.
Hmm.
Instead they had solar panels and 12-volt lights and no refrigeration, no air conditioning, you know, the stuff that we take for granted, he didn't grow up with, right?
Right.
And he's 27, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like this was in the, you know, last century or anything. But when he got when he got through 4 years undergrad, he got a full ride scholarship to Berkeley
Mm.
because of his academics and the extracurricular work he had done around his career direction
Right.
during summer school,
Hmm.
right? And in talking to him, one of the big ahas is that he sees what he's doing right now as so much easier. You know, it's effort-wise, it's so much easier for him because it's mostly intellectual versus, you know, going diving in the middle of the night to go get fish. You can die doing that, and people do.
Yeah.
And so for him, this is like he's in the playground,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a perspective that most people don't have, right?
Hmm.
I expect his career is going to go really far
Yep.
because he recognizes that what he's doing now, even though it may be intellectually challenging,
Right.
is way, way, way easier
Hmm.
than and much bigger impact in a big scale than what he was doing previously.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
than how he grew up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
kids aren't struggling right now
yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Well, they're struggling because they don't have that social skills or that social emotional intelligence that they need, right? To
Exactly.
work with
Yeah.
other people. I mean, it's one thing to go to school and just focus on what you're studying, but if you're not engaged with other people, or if you're not beside your family, because we're in this pandemic, but you know, that type
Mhm.
of thing, then you're kind of like you were saying, it's really hard to get a job, and it's because you don't know enough questions to ask or what's going on, and you have all that other emotional stuff. And I think that's harder actually to learn later in life than at the beginning of your life, like in high school, junior high, high school. I don't know. This is my
We're,
but
I think
totally wrong.
so. I'm a huge fan of growth mindset.
Yeah.
You know, Carol Dweck wrote the book on growth mindset, and a lot of people have continued to evolve that concept.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, oh God, I'm gonna have to send you the book, but I just started reading a book, and the title is something like "Personality Isn't Fixed."
Okay.
And the author's a psychologist, and he talks about how people are always learning and growing and evolving. People that are really happy and satisfied with their lives
Right.
are always learning and growing and evolving.
Right.
And people that are dissatisfied tend to not be,
Right.
because they learned a set of skills and they want the world to operate around that set of skills,
Okay.
and the world's changing,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, if you want a landline phone, they don't make landline phones anymore. You have to get a cell phone. This is
Right.
it, right? I don't have a phone line into my house. We all have cell phones,
Yeah.
right? That's the new normal.
Yeah.
If you know, if there's some kind of parts that you want for your car, and you go to the local parts store and they don't have them, you can go to Amazon and order them,
Right.
right? And maybe faster than the car parts store can get them,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's okay, great, you know? And so the world's changing, it's moving forward, medicine is changing.
Yeah.
You know, to your point earlier about, you know, sales is changing and how people do stuff, and we're doing all this stuff digitally, and, you know, contracts are now all done all digitally and signed digitally, and not using a pen anymore on a piece of paper. I think it's just as easy for people to learn when they're older.
Yeah.
It's just that that's not what we've been told.
Yeah.
Right. I just saw an article that talked about this dichotomy where people have been told that when you're older, you can't learn as well. And yet people that are older are learning at an incredible rate.
Right.
Right. So the data is totally belying the story.
Right.
Right. And the beautiful thing about the learning is it's really good neuroplasticity driver of brain growth. The
Mm-hmm.
brain keeps growing forever, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps away dementia. So
Right.
another great reason to be learning new stuff. Right. And so and it also helps with your social skills.
Right.
Right. So, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of curiosity. Just if you haven't guessed, like I'm pathological about curiosity, to learn stuff.
Yeah.
Right. You know, how's this stuff work?
Curious.
Yeah. You know, and you don't have to be necessarily good at it.
Yeah.
But it's better to have some than none. You know, I'm a bad juggler
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to know what's the basics, fundamentals of juggling. I didn't want to be, you know, juggling for a living. I just wanted to understand the basic fundamentals.
Right.
Right. And it's a practice, right? If I haven't juggled for a while, like if I picked up 3 balls to juggle right now, they'd all hit the floor.
Yeah.
Very rapidly, you know, because I haven't juggled in a while, right?
Yeah.
But then I get, you know, my start juggling, and I'm okay, you know, here's we go. Oops, okay, there's, you know, on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, you get back into the practice, but I think, you know, the learning all the time is certainly available, especially with the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really matter how old you are, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're willing to have that growth mindset and say, wow, what's the stuff that I can learn today
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't know yesterday?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or what stuff can I learn now today that, you know, I really need to know, but I don't want to do it. You know, like, you know, it's like being curious.
Right.
Just saying, okay,
Yeah.
let's make some time, some space to learn that. and let's get it done,
Yeah.
you know, kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you think, are you going to try get into more high schools, or are you,
Definitely.
where are you now?
So we started this last August.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally, so we got approached by a Silicon Valley high school.
Okay.
It was through networking, right? Friends of ours knew this group of kids who they knew they had problems at the high school with depression and anxiety.
Right.
They had done an in-school survey, and 85% of the kids were either clinically depressed or anxious about something.
Right.
That's crazy, right? That means 15% of the kids were either not paying attention or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or have amazing lives. So we met with them. We talked about what they needed. They know of the program that my partner works in, and they asked us if we could build a curriculum for them because they'd already negotiated with the school to get the slots for a curriculum,
Right.
but they couldn't find a curriculum. And so we said, sure, we'll build it for you. We thought it was a one-off at first.
Yeah.
And then we started looking at the statistics at the other high schools in California. Most people don't know that the average in California is 35% of the students are clinically depressed. This was last year, before COVID.
Right.
Right? 35% are clinically depressed, and 15% have thought about suicide.
Yeah. I know.
Which is a crazy number, right?
Right.
And before we started looking at the data, I didn't know the numbers were like that. I had no idea that was where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also learned that the schools don't have the money to continue putting in counselors and therapists who are basically the lifeguards.
Right.
Because those are really expensive solutions, and that because kids weren't learning the skills they needed, they were getting more and more and more stressed, and then they need all of a sudden counselors, therapists. Ultimately, they end up in a program like my partner runs.
Right.
But it's a lot harder to get people back to healthy and in control of their lives when they've gotten that far out on the spectrum.
Right.
It's a lot harder to make you comfortable in the water after we've had to rescue you because you've almost drowned.
Right. Right. Yeah.
If you start someone who feels relaxed and they jump in you get them swimming lessons at an early age, it's easy to have them become super comfortable and confident in the water. If they have been afraid of the water and they've had a series of bad experiences in the water, getting them swimming lessons is really, really challenging.
That'd be me. I'll just
exactly, right?
Drowning.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and
just
so
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're expanding out to high schools as fast as we can right now. And and this is our first year. So this school year started up. We're in one district right now. We're talking with the second district about implementation. There's a third school that we're talking with. It's a standalone. We'll do a district or a school, whichever way.
Right.
That we're working on getting into, and then another school that just reached out to us and asked us if we could also go and help their students out. And like, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And what's the growth? Kind of our 10-year vision is that our curriculum is nationwide, and that it's just like you go into high school and you start learning chemistry. You go to high school and you start learning the HAERT program and the social emotional skills structure and the tactics.
Right.
And that my partner's really trying to put herself out of a job in the clinical setting.
Right.
So kids don't go there, right? Because unfortunately what she's seeing is more and more kids, they have a waiting list now of kids who want to get into her program.
Yeah.
Which is horrible.
Yeah. We never thought kids would be at that point, but I think there's a lot of pressure from different cultures, and different parents have different viewpoints of where the kid should be rather than as a normal kid. Growing up, I was just, taught to be a normal kid, right? Yeah. School was important, but my social activities or my volunteer work were just as important, right? Versus now,
Right.
I see them much more structured as far as activities and their school, but not so much emotionally intelligent in that realm, like you were saying. And if you are
Exactly.
emotional intelligent, you're likely to be more, like you were saying, calm or de-stressed. But if you're stressed, you know what to do to de-stress yourself most of the time, or you just seek out some help, right? And I think that's the challenge.
Right. Exactly.
Most people in that realm that you're dealing with, they don't know enough questions to ask or how to ask for help, or just become, I'm gonna do it by myself. And I said, well, yeah, okay, you can, but everybody needs help. You know?
Yeah, and that's totally true. Yeah, historically people have been afraid to talk about their emotions.
Right.
This doesn't, most cultures aren't really good about people saying, well, I'm really afraid, right?
Yeah.
I'm really sad.
Yeah.
I need someone to help and support me. And we've lost the structures to help people start to, on the emotional and social side, learn the skills they need to grow and be effective and move forward and make these things happen so that they can transition, through rites of passage out into the real world,
right, and
become effective, right, and get stuff and do stuff, right. And when I'm thinking back to when I got out of high school, I didn't have the money to, like my folks couldn't pay for college, and I was really afraid of getting a student loan because I didn't want to have that financial burden long term.
right.
And so I got a job. And I paid for my college, and I worked full time.
Right.
And I didn't have a social life.
Yeah.
Really, and 2020 hindsight, when I look back on that, I recognize there's a ton of stuff I learned working while I was in college that was really, really valuable skills that I still use today.
Right.
So, I think back and I'm like, man, I got paid to learn a bunch of stuff, in a work context, and it also covered the education for my college at the same time, right?
Right.
That's a double win, right? And I don't think people think about that as a way to approach it.
Right.
Right. As a model. And cause it was, I didn't have much of a social life. Like I said, it was just, I had stuff to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you had a social at work. That was your social life.
Kind of. Yeah. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. Or, I knew people, right. And we'd talk and, I'd have lunch with friends and that kind of thing. But, I wasn't partying really. No. I didn't have the time. Yeah. And I didn't miss it really. Yeah. I felt like looking back, like, wow, college was awesome. There was a lot of learning. There was a lot of challenges, but those challenges actually made me stronger for everything else that I have done since then. Right.
Yeah. Well, it's been so cool to chat with you, Bill. To wrap up.
Yeah. Nice talking with you.
Can you just, is there anything you want to say before we close off the call?
If you're a high school student, or if you're involved with high school students, or, their relatives or whatever, we really, really, really want to help them get their heads in a space where they're not going to be stressed, depressed, suffering from anxiety, because the long-term impacts of that are bad. Right. Our URL is HAERTprogram.com, HAERT program.com. And we're trying to get out to as many high school students. And and actually this stuff is good whether you're in high school or you're in college.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same for adults too, because brain chemistry is brain chemistry.
Right.
And so if you're an adult and you're curious about it, we're more than happy to help you out.
Right. Right.
And it's easy to do. And oh my God, your life will be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course. Yeah. We'll make sure we'll get that out to everybody, Bill. And thank you for being on the call today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, appreciate it.
Have a great
And
day.
thank you everybody for tuning in. And if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box on my page. It's Hard at Work page on Facebook, and we'll get the answers out to you, or any other information. We'll put Bill's information. You can reach out to him there as well. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And remember, always be kind to each other. It's always important. And be kind to yourself. Okay. Thank you.
Definitely.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.